wonderful paper in this. Similarly, it's also my honor and pleasure to present one to Anthropology because he also authored a paper.
There is also a previous contact between our teacher, the Professor and Professor Sharma. And our university is also a very young university. Just it has been established in 1985. And Anthropology department is also established at the just first stage of this university. Out of the 6 departments, Anthropology is also one of them. This department is also very much active from the different domain of teaching and research also. Per year, I have also seen the record that more than 8 PhD awarded are also obtained from this department. Most dynamic teachers are also present here. Out of this, one is also my elder brother, that is Dr. and other one is the Kosi also. Dr. Krishan Sharma is also expert in the field of medical genetics, human genetics, and just few minutes before, Professor Sharma also informed me that he is at present engaged in the twin research. It's the most important field I work in. And very few scientists in the non-medical field, especially, is engaged in this twin research. I hope that different domains of the twin research would be exposed by the extensive research work of Professor Sharma. And from his research work, our students and the research scholars, including ourselves, that is the faculty members also, would be benefited from your lecture. And this type of UGC marking lecture is very much beneficial for our university because it is a very interior university. It is situated at a very interior geographical location. We are not successful always to invite different experts from the different corner of our country, and we are also happy that you also accept our invitation. I hope that our students will be benefited, and they are also devoted to the research work in the molecular genetics, human genetics, as well as the other field of anthropology from the lecture of Professor Sharma. So thank you, sir. I also offer heartiest thanks on behalf of our university also.
Other senior faculty members, research scholars, and students. Let me at the very outset say that I'm not delivering any specialized talk. I'm just delivering a general lecture, just keeping in view that research scholars and students, they should know that anthropology is becoming a very popular subject, and there's a lot of scope and a lot of contributions which anthropologists can make. And the first heard this term, but this is a very upcoming area of research where anthropologists they can do a lot of contribution. This is a term which is you can say a very shorthand term which is used for biodiversity perspective or biogenetic perspective. Biodiversity, I hope you know, whenever we talk about biodiversity, it refers to variety of life in all its forms, levels, combinations, and include genetic diversity, which would include all omics, proteomics, genomics, and phenomics. If you know, this is the omics. Then species diversity, ecosystem diversity, etc. All these things are included when we talk about the biodiversity. Then the biogenetic, when we especially talk about the biogenetic resources, we refer to those resources like plants, animals, microorganisms, cells, and genes. And this next part of the term, prospecting, here any which has some commercial value comes in prospecting. Whether it has a commercial value or that thing can be developed into a value which has saleable. So that is the prospecting part. So joining these two, bioprospecting would refer to the search, identification, collection, use or removal of biological and genetic resources of any organism, mineral, because minerals are also included because there may be some biological products, or organic substances for scientific research or commercial development. So bioprospecting is an umbrella term where organic compound and sources of genetic and biochemical sources, they are included. Then there's another related term is biopiracy, which you know, I hope, because when bioprospecting is pursued without knowledge, free prior consent of the owners of resources, and without benefit sharing. That's very important, and anthropologists can play a lot of role here. The term biological diversity was coined by Thomas Lovejoy in the year 1980. Then later on, Rosen in 1985, Wilson 1986, they applied the term biodiversity, the short form of biological diversity. Then in 1992, I hope all of you know that the Earth Summit, where the Convention on Biological Diversity was held in Rio de Janeiro in 1992. At that time, in that convention, they talked about how to protect the interests of traditional people knowledge and innovation and practices. And this is again where anthropology comes, when we talk about the traditional people's knowledge. And that convention was signed by 50 world leaders and then later ratified by 194 countries of the world. Now, I have already talked to you about prospecting, but it was at that time I have talked to you about that, and bioprospecting also. Now, the goal set by the CBD. The conservation of biological diversity, the first goal. Second goal, the sustainable use of its components. And third, the fair and equitable share of benefits arising out of commercial use. These were the three major goals which were set by the CBD. Some crucial components and timeline, because there have been regularly upgraded and things, meetings have been taking place. The crucial component of CBD for biodiversity is that rich countries is to have sovereignty over the bioresources, as the treaty recognizes their right to regulate and charge outside the excess of their biodiversity. Biotic resources are not considered as a common heritage. That is the second major thing, because earlier this bioresources, they used to be considered as common heritage of all people. Because the world has moved from free to controlled access to genetic resources, the common heritage which yesterday we used to talk about, now that has become biopiracy. Since 1994, the delegates of contracting parties, they have been meeting every second year to decide specific actions to be taken based on the convention which have been taking places. For example, in January 29, 2000, more than 130 countries, they adopted biosafety protocol in Montreal, Canada, and that protocol entered into force on 11 September 2003. And that protocol, biosafety protocol, is called Cartagena Protocol of Biosafety to honor Colombia, which hosted the extraordinary conference of the parties to the convention of the CBD in Cartagena in 1999. And the aim of this protocol is to ensure the safe handling, transport, and use of living modified organisms. That's very important because these result from the modern biotechnology and may have some adverse effect on the biological diversity. So taking in a way that may have adverse effect on human health also. So that's why the special protocol which now is effective since 2003. The 10th Congress, again that is very important, that convention on CBD COP10 took place in October 18 to 29, 2010 at Nagoya, Japan, and two very important decisions were taken. The protocol lays out a vision for using the genetic material in plants, animals and microbes for food, medicine, industrial products, cosmetics and other applications in a fair, equitable way so that both users and providers can benefit. And recently, in October 8 to 19, 2012, the CBD COP11 was held at Hyderabad. And where the developed countries, they agreed to double the fund flow to developing countries by 2015, so that to halt the rate of loss of planet's biodiversity. So that is a very recent agreement which took place at Hyderabad. Now coming to the role of anthropologists. Now, bioprospecting recognizes the rights of indigenous and local people over the local knowledge, genetic resources, and equitable benefit sharing with indigenous people. Anthropologists can play a very important role in bioprospecting from the ethnographic and indigenous knowledge studies. Both cultural and biological anthropologists, they have to role in bioprospecting, because the empirical data which they would be collecting would enable the bioprospecting dialect to evolve beyond the rhetorics that has been dominating so far. Now, indigenous cultures and biodiversity in India, because that should be of special interest to us as anthropologists. India is one of the 12 mega biodiversity countries of the world, having varied ecosystems ranging from tropical rainforests to high alpine cold deserts, grasslands, wetlands, coasts. So, India embraces three major biological realms: Indo-Malayan, Eurasian, Afrotropical, and adorn about 10 biogeographical zones and 26 biotic provinces. As far as the land area is concerned, India has only 2.5% of the world's Earth land area, but accounts for 8% of the recorded species of the world. So, and those include millions of races, subspecies, local variants. I hope as anthropologists you know these things when you divide a species into its components, subspecies and races, etc. Now, as far as indigenous people is concerned, again, India is the home to large number of indigenous people, and many of them, they have untouched lifestyle. They have been not touched by the lifestyle of the modern world. More than 84.4 million is the 84.4 million people which they are having, which are included into tribal people, and they account for 8.2% of the total population of the country. And as far as the Indian Constitution is concerned, they recognize the 645 distinct scheduled tribes. There are 5,290 groups of indigenous people in the world, with an estimated number of 370 million people living in more than 70 countries of the world. Now, the WHO gives a good definition of indigenous population, which I feel at times, the way we describe tribes, very atrociously we have defined them in not very good sense, but the definition given by the WHO about the indigenous people, which includes tribes also, is that it includes the communities that live within or attached to geographically distinct traditional habitats or ancestral territories, and who identify themselves as being part of a distinct cultural group descended from a group present in the area before modern states were created and the current borders defined. They generally maintain cultural and social identities, social, economic, cultural, political institutions, separate from the mainstream or dominant society or culture. They represent a rich diversity of culture, religions, traditions, languages, histories, and yet continue to be world's most marginalized population groups. These people inhabit significant, I don't know, it's a matter of chance, but even in India, if you take that all the tribal people, they inhabit significant areas of high natural value, where they depend directly or indirectly upon the wealth of these ecosystems for their livelihood. And it has been widely acknowledged that their economies are closely adapted to the natural resources in their particular environments. I think anthropologists know better about it. And anthropology, which is a related science, captured public imagination in 1990s. For this very important, please, some of these things are very important for anthropologists. They should take note of these. For miracle cure among the vanishing cultures of the tropical forest. And it is these areas where the advanced countries with rich technologies, they are making advantage. Now they may not be able to do it because of the international treaties. And it has been felt that because of these close interactions of the indigenous people with their local environments, they can play an important role in alleviating the loss of flora and fauna of our planet. And in that sense, the ethnoscience becomes very valuable. The accomplishments of the Aboriginal people in learning plant properties are as a result of a long intimate association with their dependence on the local vegetation, and this native knowledge warrants careful critical attention of the part of modern scientific methods. Again, a role where anthropologists can play their part. In tropical areas, there are hundreds of thousands of plant species whose biological effects have not been properly studied. People living in these areas have lived and experimented with for a millennia, offers a shortcut to the discovery of new medically industrially useful compounds, because they know, the indigenous people, they know what is the value of those plants which are growing in those areas. Now, another point which is again, they are based on natural products, and indigenous medicine is not found in nature. It's because usually we say medicine is found in nature. Instead of that, they are the products of traditional knowledge. Because the people who have been living, they have created that knowledge. The CBD preamble recognizes close dependence of many indigenous and local communities on biological resources and gives expression to the desirability of sharing equitable benefits arising from the use of traditional knowledge relevant to the conservation and sustainable use of biodiversity. Some of the clauses maybe I am referring to here in 18J, which states respect, preserve and maintain knowledge, innovation and practices of indigenous and local communities, embodying traditional lifestyle relevant for the conservation and sustainable use of biological diversity, and promote their wide application with the approval and involvement of the holders of such knowledge, innovation and practices, and encourage the equitable sharing of benefits arising from the utilization of such knowledge, innovation and practices. Similarly, Article 10C calls upon the signing countries to protect and encourage customary use of biological resources in accordance with the traditional cultural practices that are compatible with the conservation or sustainable use of requirements. The CBD provisions also recognize significant knowledge, innovation, practices of indigenous people, local communities in the field of food and agriculture. Traditional land use, some of these may be debatable points, foster agrobiodiversity that create genetic diversity, including local cultivars and breeds of crops, animals best suited to specific local environmental conditions. And such knowledge is not restricted to subsistence activities, but include detailed observations of population ecology, specific interactions that arise from long-term association with particular flora and fauna. Now, is there a need to differentiate indigenous people and local communities? I hope as anthropologists we know these things, the differences with indigenous people and local communities, and we work on both these communities as well as in urban areas. Now there is no such division which used to occur earlier between the anthropologists and others. So anthropologists can address this question of disparity and differences between indigenous people and local communities. And this question has not been addressed adequately by the CBT. Politically aware indigenous people usually seek collective rights and self-determination for the use of biological and cultural resources. That's for the indigenous people, they want collective right. On the other hand, when we come to the local farming communities, they have their own individualistic socio-economic aspirations. So that's slightly different from the tribals and such indigenous community, where they talk about the community, and where the local communities, people, they are talking about their individualistic preferences. So lumping these indigenous people into farmers group directly undermines the indigenous efforts of the self-determination and creates concerns that will be immersed after farmers' movement, and their specific concerns coordinated to those of the more powerful and numerous farmer groups. As you know, farmer bodies are very politically also they are very important. So and hold a lot of power also. So there's need for anthropologists and others to work on these issues. The indigenous knowledge of the use of plants for medicines, inherited over generations, is often sacred and deeply embedded in the culture. And the farming communities Yes, they do use the traditional approaches, but then they make use of the modern approaches also, like chemical fertilizer, insecticides, etc. Those things. In these cases, where changes to improve crop are brought about by human manipulation, that's okay, fine. But the chemicals within the wild plants are valuable by themselves in the use of natural components for medicine. So merging these two sort of people needs evaluation, as I said. Now, sharing of intellectual property rights and benefits, another term where anthropology is very valid, that is the ethnobiology. The first International Congress of Anthropology was held in Belem, Brazil in 1988, and which is known to the world as a Belem Declaration, which states the economic, agricultural and health condition of many people are dependent on the preservation of tropical forests and other fragile ecosystems that are disappearing. The native people have been wardens protecting 99% of the world's genetic resources. That's why the importance is being given to the native people. And there is an inextricable link between the cultural and political diversity. These premises have significant ethical, legal implications for bioprospectors, and that are reflected in numerous international conventions, declarations, and codes of ethics that have been drafted and adopted in the past decade. In pursuing ethnoecological research, the full disclosure of research intentions and outcomes, prior informed consent from affected communities, equitable benefit sharing from any products or derivations of research and other ethical issues, and its dissemination in the form of publication, film, etc. Wherever you get earn money out of it, whether with either maybe even publications, other also maybe that will also come slowly. The subject of intellectual property right has now become a particularly contentious ethical issues since industrial discoveries and their patents can be protected by law, but collective indigenous or traditional knowledge of local communities cannot be protected. So the CBD has initiated a process in concurrence with the Food and Agriculture Organization and the World Intellectual Organization to investigate sui generis options for the protection of traditional genetic resources and their check. The anthropologists are now providing a key to understanding which people and plants are included in the promise of selling biodiversity to save it, and which are not. Hayden 2006 studied the consequences of linking scientific research and rural enfranchisement to the logic of intellectual property. Now, several anthropologists, they have pointed out that attempt to include local knowledge into national and international patent law at the expense of others is incompatible with the local cosmologies and we ultimately inflict symbol violence upon the indigenous cultures. As the copyright culture, maybe particular fractions or organizations might contribute to this schism of the communities and fuel the establishment of ethnic boundaries. Now, environmental anthropology and historical ecology, that's another area where anthropologists have been I would hurriedly go through this. Historical ecology is a new interdisciplinary research program concerned with the interactions through time between societies and environments and the consequences of these interactions for the understanding the formation of contemporary and past cultures and landscapes. These research programs are based on hardcore postulates. Practically all environments on Earth have been affected by humans. Human nature is not programmed genetically or otherwise to lessen or augment species diversity or other environmental parameters. So earlier humans, they exploited their environmental resources for their survival and perpetuity, but now they are being exploited for economic greed, for amassing more wealth. So there's a question, I don't know, there's need to look into these aspects. As anthropologists, since it's a science of man in time and space, as you all know, and if we look back at the dawn of agriculture about 8000 BC, as most of you would be knowing, the population of the world was approximately 5 million. That is about 10,000 years back, when the modern era came. The population was about 5 million. And over the 8,000 years, up to 180, it grew into 200 million. And it took 1800 years to reach from 200 millions to 1 billion. 1800 years. And the second billions took only achieve 130 years. So first 1800 years and second 130 years. Then in 1930 we became 2 billion. And in 1959 we became 3 billion. In 1974 we became 4 billion. And in 1987 we became 5 billion. And in 1999, you can again more 6 billion. And by March 12, we became 6 billion. Well, every 12 to 13 years, 1 billion people are added. So you have a problem of global warming, where anthropologists can make a lot of contribution. I don't know how much time I do have. Okay. So, all of you know about the anthropogenic climate changes, which have been documented in every ocean, in every continent, and anthropology as a discipline has a lot to contribute to this area of interest. And many anthropologists, they are doing work in this, and I think many of you can also work if they wish. There is a relationship between culture, climate, from prehistoric times to the present. Changing anthropological discourse on climate and environment, the diversity of environment and social cultural changes currently occurring around the globe, and unique methodologies and epistemological tools. Anthropologists, they are working on climate research. But not many people are contributing to this, to the understanding of how societies they dealt with environmental change. They may be talking about how they adapted, how sustenance was there, how much time they used to spend in various activities, but they never worked to understand how societies dealt with the environmental change and climatic variability, and usually during the first 100 years of anthropology. These are some of the new areas where we can work. They described and interpreted human diversity in terms of ecology and ecosystems, most of in those years. The lack of professional interest in climate change over longer periods is intriguing, knowing the importance of climate in the lifestyle and life cycles of human cultures. So anthropogenic global warming is the cumulative effect of human actions. This, the cultural anthropologists, they will be going about the Margaret Mead, William Clark, Stephen Raynor, where they have drawn the attention of anthropologists to the concern generated by anthropogenic climatic changes in the cultures, but they were not so focused about these areas. But now the anthropologists, they are working on science and symbolism of glacial retreat. For example, Orlov et al. In 2002 have demonstrated ethnoclimatological knowledge among Andes people, Andes farmers especially, who use the visibility of the constellations in June in the mountains as an indicator of planting times for potatoes. And this is an indigenous method which is with the accuracy of about 65% accuracy of forecasting that. Such indigenous climatic forecasting and techniques do exist elsewhere too. And there is a need to work even in these areas, surrounding areas where you are located. And political research on many environmental issues has now become a part of broad public sphere, and that has witnessed a sharp increase in environmental concern and activism. Anthropology has been provoking scholars to be proactive on the front lines of climate change, providing instructions on how to work with the research communities, with innovative forms of communication in higher education, in policy environment, as individuals and other critical areas. Now, indigenous people make up 1/3 of the world's poor, and the territories overlap with all biodiverse regions of the world. And IP occupy and protect vast forests that are being assessed and presented in the global climate change mitigation programs. They suffer human rights abuses from repressive governments, civil conflicts, protected area impositions on their territories, and the strength of IPs as conservation and development partners include the diversities of organizing abilities, knowledge, and local adapted cultures. And just to explain some of the things where we talk about the applications. For example, the earthquake and tsunami. You know the Asian tsunami, which triggered on 26th of December 2004, earthquake measuring about 8.9 on the Richter scale, and it devastated the Andaman and Nicobar Islands, tilting the archipelago to submerge some of the areas and lifted some others. The Andaman Nicobar Islands, they are a home to at least 6 major indigenous groups. The tribes have most ancient, the Paleolithic nomadic lifestyles. The Negrito, like all the Ongis, they are Negrito hunters, gatherers, which are confined to the Little Andamans. For them, though that may be more concerned with the cultural anthropological movement, tsunami was a phenomenon which explained the unique worldview and understanding of life and death. In contrast to non-indigenous settlers, indigenous tribal community of Ongis, they showed greater resilience in response to grave disaster. For Ongi, it was about the day when land becomes water, which they call it Gyan Gizebe. The belief that the earth quake, that is Lolo Lopobe, that is the local language, are frequent and essential for the ordering of species in nature. In their culture, earthquakes are associated with the creation of dead ancestors crossing over the other world and becoming spirits. That's their belief. The image of rising water levels have often been referred to in cultural accounts of the island as floods, a kind of disaster associated with since the mythical times, with the destruction of fire by rising water. They believe that water comes to destruction of their fire. and they want to protect the fire. So all their efforts are to save the fire from being extinguished by the water across various tribes that exemplify the urgency in these cultures to save fire, which has been long regarded as a substance that creates new zoological and geographical forms, brings orders out of disorder, and marks distinguished features and cultures. And that's also somehow associated with jute cultivation, if you know something. Unlike the settlers, the Ongis, they do not wait to wonder at the earthquake, which to them is a noble order of nature, but they do take their cue from the daily observation of water levels. The Ongis say that if the water goes away quickly, it will rush back even more and with a greater speed, as the good spirits want to provide the order to the sea and forest on which the descended Ongis depend. So they know what will happen. So that I don't know how many of them they were killed in this. I wonder maybe none of them were killed because they knew that this will happen. So some of the case studies of bioprospecting case studies which are important. So that's why I'm only referring to these so that you know as anthropologists what contributions you can make. And in India there's a Kani tribe in Kerala, and Tropical Botanic Garden and Research Institute undertook an ethnobotanical field study in the tribal inhabited West Ghat region of Kerala in 1987. And during the expedition, they came to know about a wild plant known as Trichophus zealanicus, which the local people they called as Arogya Pachak, which was being frequently eaten by the Kani tribals for keeping them energetic and agile. So pharmacological investigations of the fruit revealed its anti-fatigue properties, which was presence of various glycolipids and some other non-steroid compounds with anti-stress and anti-hepatotoxic properties. The team developed a polyherbal product with the name as Jeevani. And after satisfactory clinical evaluation of this herbal drug, it has been released for commercial production. And after negotiation with various interested parties, the manufacturing license of Jeevani was transferred to Ayurveda Pharmacy Coimbatore for a license of rupees 10 lakh people for a period of 7 years. So TBGRI, in consultation with the tribal community, has worked out the arrangement of benefit sharing, and according to this arrangement, they agreed to share 50% of the license fee with the, and royalty with the tribal community. Now, exploitations are always there. That's in us. That's it. Maybe we call it a key. Now, in Brazil, Extracta Molecule Naturalis firm was set up in 1998, again at Rio de Janeiro, where the summit was held. And it entered into partnership with some international associates. In July 1999, Extracta and Glaxo, welcome. All of you know this firm. Glaxo is a multinational medicinal firm. They signed a contract with a local biotechnology firm to collaborate in the screening of materials derived from natural resources with the aim of finding single molecules. Extracta set up a chemical biodiversity bank of around 30,000 substances extracted from Brazil. If you know, Brazil is a home to so many tropical forests. The natural resources and of known chemical composition. The new molecules of pharmaceutical interest were patented by Extracta, and their use was licensed exclusively to the Glaxo. and which would undertake the final development of the product and the clinical tests and the global marketing and sales. And that was exploited by that company without any obstacles till 2000. Because by that time there was no law regulating the kind of activity that they were doing. But the extensive anthropological research is being conducted in Peru in an effort to preserve the unique properties of the plants and to gain a deeper scientific understanding of these plants. I hope you know about even turmeric also. US wanted to exploit turmeric as the key constituent of the turmeric, which is an Indian product, but they couldn't, ultimately had failed. I hope you know about these, and basmati is another language, they all those things were failed. So now there are, these things were exploited, but there was no national legislation on these issues. So that's all. Biological anthropology, because even if you are working on nutrition, body composition, nutrition, or biomedical anthropology or medical anthropology, where you go to these areas, you should, not work that you just do measurements and all and come back. You should keep your ears and eyes open and should ask them that what are the things which they do. Maybe in some other lectures, or maybe I will be talking to you about these things. When nutrition, I will be talking to you about nutrition, etc. Where those things are very important when you evaluate their nutritional status and other things.
Right. Any questions?
If there's any question, please.
Any questions?
They used to be the domain of anthropology. I mean, my purpose of highlighting is please protect your discipline. Because the other people from other disciplines, they are working on ethno-science. They are working on biodiversity or biocultural diversity. And anthropologists, they may not be working that much. So those who have a knowledge of science, they can work in the biological fields. Those who do not have a knowledge of science, they can work in some other cultural areas and so on. Or you can both work in both the areas. I've been always advocating the interaction between culture, because that's biocultural component is what unite or what created anthropology. Otherwise, there was no need to create anthropology as a separate discipline, because if there's an interaction between culture and biology, that shapes human biology, and that shapes also perhaps culture also, because the adaptation to the local milieu. Thanks.
Thank you, sir. The next lecture will be at 2:30, sir. 2:30. Yes, I mean,
this is beyond doubt that anthropologists could contribute a lot in this is when, especially when different populations are concerned, indigenous people are concerned. But we have so many available models to study human-environment interactions. For example, the traditional human ecology model. We have these models. But with the coming up of new problems, new challenges, is there any, according to your knowledge, is there any available model, new model, developed by anthropologists, where anthropologists can only contribute? For example, not adopting some other models and like that. Unique contributions, is there available? Another thing I would like to add that once upon a time I heard one lecture from a Brazilian scientist. So in that lecture he mentioned a very good conceptual framework in order to explain the effort of the Brazilian scientists to conserve the Brazilian nut. Actually there he explained the concept of habitat conservation. With reference to that, I have just it has just come to my mind that if you just understand the human habitat, I mean the indigenous habitat, anthropologically or something like that. So that may be one way, if you have any available knowledge.
First of all, I am of the opinion that please don't hesitate to use any model available anywhere. And if you can adapt that model to suit your needs, because whenever you want to conduct research, you would go with a focused aims and objectives, right? So when you have your objectives very clear, and that you can only come to know when you know what work has been done on those aspects. So there would be contributions of anthropologists, because anthropologists, ecology is a field where again anthropologists, yes, there are so many good reviews on this topic are available in annual review of anthropology. Very good review, please. If you look at a very good review on the anthropological models which have been used. So I will only suggest you that please look into the annual reviews of anthropology. They may be, I think, available on that. UGC, if you go to through UGC, in Dept, through internet you can always go and see those very beautiful reviews which have been done. Actually, I don't know, I also was told to edit a issue of Journal of Physical Anthropology published by October 2011, on which I focus only on the environmental factors. And though maybe I may be in a way, you can say, some people, there's always critics whenever you do a thing. It should be criticized also. I'm not saying that you should not be criticized. Everything which we do should be criticized. That's a healthy side. And that I contributed more articles to that volume since I was the editor. But my focus was because when I looked into the anthropologists who were working, they were working very on the specialized topics, and they could only contribute within those areas. And then the purpose which I had in my mind would have lost. So there were maybe 18-20 papers, but maybe I have some, and one of them is on these aspects also. So you can look into that also if that is available in Journal of Physical Anthropology published by the people.
It's available here, but we get
Yes, so 2011 volume.
Maybe afterwards we will request you to send one.
Yes, I can send you, no problem.
That is the easiest way.
Oh, yes, I can send you.
Okay, thank you very much.
Any other questions?
Branches, biotechnology, or some other branches are coming up and they become very popular. Similarly, after the publication of this book by Charles Darwin, Origin of Species, 1959, this model became everybody was adopting this.
Professor Sharma, I think there is a printing mistake. It is 1859.
Oh, yes, it is 1859. Yes, sir. Sorry.
No, it's all right. Our students know this.
The Darwinian theory is more known for the synthesis of many new principles and the detailed expounding of evolutionary model on the basis of field observation and existing theories. As I said, the theory was accepted both by biologists as well as social scientists. And some of the elements which were given in this theory of Darwinian theory were in conformity with the Marxist theory also. Now coming to the initial reaction of anthropologists, some of them were very hostile to give the initial interpretations for many reasons. Because when you say that all the races have a common lineage, actually there were people who never liked that model, and you link all the races to non-human anthropology. That was another reason that many races, some races used to think they are very superior. Even today also their races consider them very superior, and they were created as such. They have nothing to do with the anthropology, other non-human anthropology religions. So they reacted in a hostile manner. As far as human evolution was concerned, Charles Darwin was a very intelligent man. He was very slow to react. He was not a very good, you can say, public opinion, perhaps would speak too much. No, he was never. He was a very quiet worker. And whenever he used to do anything, he used to wait that should he do, should he not do. For example, when he even decided to get married, he wrote two things. What are the advantages, what are the disadvantages of getting married? And then he evaluated and weighed and found that the advantages are more than disadvantages, and then he got married. So that's why he was a very cautious person. Basically, he was very cautious. So he, in the Origin of Species, never said anything about humans. He said so many other things, but he never said anything about humans as such. He waited for about 10 years, from 1860 to 1871, when he published another book. For about 10 years he waited, and his well-known book is Descent of Man, which was published in 1871. Now, coming to some of the pre-Darwin evolutionary theories and thoughts which influenced Darwin. That's also important because a lot of credit though is given to Charles Darwin. Then there were many other people also who were equally deserving than Darwin, though Darwin was a prolific writer. But anyway, there was his grandfather Erasmus Darwin. His work on zoonomia, and which contains the system of pathology and a treatise on generation, and those thoughts foreshadowed what was the modern theory of evolution and modern evolutionary synthesis. Then another book by James Hutton, Theory of Earth, very famous book of the 18th century Scottish geologist, which earned him the title of founder of modern geology. Hutton, if you know, he propounded his theory of superposition. That states the older layers were deposited first, and the younger layers are deposited on the top of those older layers. And another principle, that is uniformitarianism, that was developed as a school of thought. I will slightly speak more of this slightly later. Hutton recognized the constructive geological processes such as volcanism, mountain building, and created instead of rocks, sediments, and the breaks and unconformities in the chronology, which could be caused by erosion, or that may be because of the absence of deposition over a long period of time. Another very important person who influenced Darwin is Charles Lyell. Principle of Geology, which he wrote in 1833, in which the concept of uniformitarianism was given in more detail and became widely accepted. Lyell documented the fact that Earth must be very old and that it has been subject to the same sort of natural processes in the past that operate even today in shaping the land. These forces can be erosion, earthquakes, glacial movements, volcanic volcanoes, and other decomposition of plants and animals, which even continue to take place today, so that the uniformitism principle which he gave are explained. The first evolutionist who can be confidently, we can say that, who publicly stated his ideas about the processes leading to biological change. All of you know about them, about him. That is